Hi, welcome to my channel Cloud with Girish. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a serverless solution to create a QR code for a Wi-Fi network. I will use AWS Lambda HTTP API using Python and Segno library to create the QR code and return the QR code image in the response. While there are many free resources available on the internet for creating QR codes, this solution demonstrates how to use AWS Serverless services to create your own QR code generation solution. I'm using Python as the programming language along with the Segno library to generate the desired QR code. Python offers a variety of QR code libraries, but for this example, I have chosen Segno. I have already created similar solution using REST API. However, in this example, I will be using HTTP API to create the Wi-Fi QR code. If you want to learn about creating same solution using REST API, please watch my video on this topic. Link is in the description. Since I mentioned HTTP API, you may be wondering what's the difference HTTP API have from AWS REST API. Well, this is another flavor of API that's offered by AWS API Gateway. It's much cheaper. Let's look at some differences from the feature perspective. It's not a complete list. I have put a link here, the source of this information, which is AWS site that describes the differences between REST API and HTTP API. AWS keep adding new features to HTTP API, so please refer to the link for the most up-to-date information on HTTP API. Some of the differences at the time of this recording, in terms of endpoint, REST API offer edge optimized, regional and private endpoint. HTTP API offer only regional. Security, REST API has like TLS, WAF. HTTP API does not support WAF, it supports TLS. In terms of API management, REST API support custom domain, API keys, rate limit, throttling. HTTP API support custom domain but does not support the remaining features. For the development, caching, request transformation, etc. is supported by REST API but not supported by HTTP. And then for cloud monitoring, the CloudWatch log is supported, but X-ray tracing, etc. is not supported in HTTP API. Why to choose HTTP API if it has lesser set of features? Lesser set of features, but is still pretty robust and featureful to support many business use cases, with the advantage of is being cheaper. And if you see here an example of pricing as of July 2024, again, this is based on the pricing published on the AWS site. I have the link here for your reference. But if you see it, HTTP API in general is 1/3 of the price. So if you see here, the first 300 millions per million price, like $1. And for REST API for the same region here, the first 333 million is like $3.50 and so on, right? So again, prices may change. Please refer to AWS pricing or contact your AWS rep for accurate latest pricing. But these are the differences between HTTP API and REST API. Depending on which API you are using, of course, your SAM template will refer different component, and that's really the intent of this workshop is to show the HTTP specific component. So with that, let's look at the architecture. Pretty straightforward. We have a user consumer that's invoking the API. API hosted in the API gateway, passing the Wi-Fi parameters like SSID, password, and security, and Lambda is consuming the information and processing it using the Segno and creating a QR code, the Wi-Fi QR code, and returning it in a .png image format, the binary data. let's look at our business use case. So the use case is to create a function to return a QR code for the Wi-Fi based on parameter passed for SSID, password, and security. Image written in the response will be in .png format. The solution will validate the method and input parameter to ensure they meet the required format and standard. And the solution need to be HTTPI based, hence function will be integrated with the API. We need the familiarity with AWS console, some knowledge of Python, Boto 3, knowledge of Lambda, and basic familiarity with API concepts. So let's look at the steps here. We're going to review the SAM template. We'll review our Lambda function. We'll build it locally using AWS SAM. And then we will validate it using one of the tool, either Postman or Bruno. And then, of course, we will get the QR code image, which can be scanned to connect to the Wi-Fi network. I'll be creating it via infrastructure as code approach using AWS Serverless application model. That's my preferred approach. However, you can create the Lambda function using the AWS console as well. So let's look at our SAM template here. So we have two resources here. One is the function, another one is the API, and then of course we have various different parameters here. So let's look at our function. We have serverless function defined here. I'm calling it Wi-Fi QR code creator function. My runtime is Python, timeout is 15 seconds, mem size is 128. I have few policies defined here, and then this is where the difference is, right? I'm calling it HTTP API. And then that's basically telling behind the scene cloud formation that the resource that need to be created is going to be HTTP API, right? So this event here, along with this API resource here, which is calling the HTTP API. And if you have watched my previous example on how to create the same solution using REST API, you will notice that I'm not explicitly stating that I'm passing a binary response back. And the reason for that is that once you define HTTP API, API gateway handle that for us. So really there are those subtle differences. Let's look at our Lambda function. So Lambda function is pretty similar. Actually, we're just getting the route key and because event is slightly different when you get it for REST API versus HTTP API. So I'm extracting the route key. And then based on that, I'm validating that it's the correct route and I have the right parameters like SSID and the network information to create the QR code. And once all that is there, then I'm creating the QR code and returning a PNG image here in the response. We'll build the function using AWS SAM. So commands are SAM build, and then I will invoke it locally using SAM local invoke. And then once I have the desired output, then I'm deploying it in the AWS cloud. I'm validating it. I have the API endpoint. So I'll pass the parameters like SSID, password, and security to create the Wi-Fi QR code. Here, the tool I'm using is Bruno. Sometimes I use Bruno or Postman. In this example is Bruno. I'm passing the endpoint and the parameters, and I'm getting the QR code back here, which I can then save it. It's a .png file. I can share it with anybody who can scan it and connect to the network, right? So pretty straightforward solution here. Like I said, there are already many solutions to create the QR code. The real intent here is just to show that how this can be created using the AWS serverless services. With this workshop, a serverless solution to generate Wi-Fi QR code using AWS Lambda, HTTP API, and Python has been successfully completed. Boto 3 and Segno library were also used along with Python to develop the solution. I have already created similar solution using REST API. However, in this example, I have used HTTP API to create the Wi-Fi QR code. If you want to learn about creating same solution using REST API, please watch my video on this topic. Link is in the description. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm working on some other interesting content on various AWS topics. These will be posted soon. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.